ideas have an expiration date.
Mm,
And because people, if people move, people's attention span and what they're into at the moment can change the next day, can change next week. So when you show them something that you did last year, I'm no longer interested. Um, so that's why it's important.
Hey, welcome to the Moodboard. My name is Aaron,
And this is Cesar.
and we come every week here to have meaningful conversations to help you unlock your creative potential. This is season 2, episode 27, and today we're going to cover some of our thoughts around creativity, the future of AI, and what that means for creative people. So why don't we dive in? I want to start off by asking you how maybe you use AI or you see yourself using it in the future.
Point because I was going to start with my personal experience with AI lately. I'm still just using it for things like crafting emails or maybe rephrasing messages to sound in a certain way, or
Yeah.
as you can say on the prompt, make it sound more professional. Mm. So things like that, I use AI for, and I'm leaning on it more than before.
Yeah.
But that's all I use AI for. It's just like email, for crafting email. That's all.
Yeah. I think it's the Apple Intelligence, for example, is built into the Apple Notes. And recently I've also been using it for proofreading and grammar checks and things like that. And I think it's a really good example how you are currently using it for your writing and communication skills. You're coming up with what you want to say, and you're using
Yes.
it to sort of sculpt it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
that's kind of how I see the trend, or I guess what you say, the collaboration working, right? You bring in what you want to do, and AI is able to um, come up and help you sort of refine it. It's sort of like an expert assistant, right?
Right.
The assistant that Siri could have been. I hope they fix it. It's pretty bad right now, but
I'm sure it'll get there.
yeah, yeah.
Um. Yeah.
I really, I mean, I really want it to work. But you know,
Have you
it's
tried Alexa?
no, I can't say that I have anytime recently.
I have
But
an Alexa at home.
okay. And how do you find it?
Well, I don't use Siri that, but I think Alexa is slightly better.
Speaking about voice interfaces, I think the demos that I've got, well, the experience I've had working with ChatGPT and the voice feature, it's really good. And I
Wow.
think it's so much better than anything that's on the phone right now in terms of like Siri or
Right.
um, any of the other options. Have you tried it out?
I have not, but I wanted to touch on the Apple Intelligence feature.
Yeah.
I updated my iPad and it gave me the option to turn it on,
Yeah.
and I said no because I feel a little bit uncomfortable AI being integrated throughout everything that I do, and I would like to keep it separate, as let's say as a separate application or like a separate compartment within
Yeah.
my phone ecosystem, because I might not necessarily want AI to see everything I do.
Right.
And I don't know if that's the point of Apple Intelligence. It's like I don't know, giving you suggestions every time you do
Yeah.
anything. But yeah, that's why I haven't turned it on.
No, it's fair. It
Mhm,
makes a lot of sense. And I think going back to the original Apple keynote where they explained how it worked, I think they did a really good job of easing my concerns personally. They explained that Apple Intelligence works with a sort of a need to know basis, so it has contextual learning or contextual access. So like if you're asking it to proofread your notes, it's not going to also be looking at your photos, or it's not going to be referencing other things within your system. But I think it's really important. I think what you just brought up, this concern of safety and privacy, these are values that I think only Apple has been really good at maintaining and enforcing, even when there's been government pressure and other sort of instances where they've shown us that they take this very seriously. But I think companies who are in the AI space are going to have to do a much better job of communicating with users how serious they take privacy and implement, design the systems so that they don't rely on just promises, but they're just actually built for security and privacy. But I totally get it. And, I turned off Siri for my system just because I was accidentally clicking it every now and then, and it was annoying. And sometimes it just comes out of nowhere. You're talking with a friend and it interprets whatever it is that you said, and Siri just turns on. I hope I don't turn it on immediately here.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. I want to go back to the thought of creatives using AI to amplify their capabilities, because we've seen this before, right? In some ways, right?
Yeah, with Photoshop, with
Exactly.
3D modeling.
Precisely, right? Like if you take a look at films or any sort of old books about Chrysler or GM or architecture or whatever, and you see these guys in like white shirts and they are in front of like blueprints and they're drawing on top of that. All of that was replaced by CAD eventually, right?
Yeah.
All of that was replaced by one guy and a computer and able to do blueprints and things like that quite quickly. So we've seen this evolution, but now that we have AI, we're going to see it again and it's going to look different, but some things are going to stay the same. I want to ask you, how do you think we as creatives will benefit, and how will we also sort of lose something? It can, like,
I think we might, some people, I think this is on a case by case scenario, but some people might misinterpret AI as the solution to whatever AI says. They're gonna run with it, copy paste what the AI said. But I think how I would approach the use of AI, and it's a good starting point, but I wouldn't necessarily go by what AI says. I will use AI as a second opinion, as a different perspective type of approach. Just it's actually more of like a out of curiosity. Oh, what would AI say? Just
yeah,
just to know what it might throw. But other than that, I will edit a lot and I will change a lot. But I don't think AI will cross the creative aspect of what I do.
right.
Because I want to retain the human ingenuity aspect. of the kind of work that I do,
Yeah.
because that's special to each one of us. To each person is special. So I think that's something that we should preserve, and that should be the raw, or like that should be the raw material in our creative mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I think AI. Some people will run with what it says. Other people, I mean, like me, will be cautious and will just use it as a second opinion. But I think that's my stand on how AI will evolve or be implemented throughout.
Yeah. I see that there's already this conversation on identity, that I've been noticing around the internet. And what I mean by that is, if you identify yourself as let's say an illustrator, and that is what you are, and
Mhm.
that's your identity, AI comes along, Midjourney comes along, and suddenly now it can also create pictures, and it can even mimic your pictures. Um, and where does that place you? Like, now the companies that were hiring you maybe are now using Midjourney, and they're skipping the whole creative process, and they're just inputting something. And now, where does that leave you as in your identity? And so I noticed that it it it's also happening for developers, for people who are seeing the writing on the wall, and seeing how anyone with, even without technical experience, can now develop and code websites, and with AI, that are quite good, and not just a normal website. It's like a website that's dynamic. It has all these different features, etc. And so one of the things that I'm starting to think about is AI is democratizing abilities, similar to how maybe CAD democratized the ability to create 3D models in someone's bedroom, rather than having a whole group of people, drawing these
Right.
three-dimensional drawings. Now anyone can sort of create digital experiences without a web developer, designer, etc. Whatever. Whether it's good or not, it's another question. But I'm really just curious about what you think in terms of holding on, or evolving your identity as these tools are sort of coming in and saying,
Mhm.
well, that thing that you thought made you special and unique,
Mhm.
now everyone can do it.
Mhm.
So what is it that makes you unique?
Right. Yeah. Also, I think about the what makes it unique would be is the quality of the idea. I think that's something important too. Which I learned, during my days at the Savannah College of Art and Design, doing my industrial design program. Uh, we were often faced with two a scenario, like this common scenario where you had a beautiful rendering, just impactful visual, but
Yeah.
the idea was
Crappy.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
scrappy.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you would have a not up to par execution, but the idea was there, the concept was there, like it was a solid idea. And they would say, like, which what kind of designer are you gonna be, like, what are you going to do, like make sure that you, yes, cultivate and nurture good ideas, but also make sure that you execute them well, because people are going to go with what's being executed well, with what's being presented well. So I think that's something that will separate, will differentiate us from AI generated work, or because what's
Yeah.
before AI? Your idea.
Yeah.
And
I
Mhm.
see that. And I want to challenge you a little bit here, because I have this concern that when the masses on social media are presented with a flood of images, whether they're AI or non-AI generated, and they don't have design training, they don't know how to distinguish what is considered great or whatever. To them, it's all in the same. How do you exist in a world where there is an increasing amount of, for lack of better terms, sort of visual ignorance, right? Where it's mostly where what I'm observing, and this is just a personal observation, it's like I'm seeing that there is a lot more gravitational pull towards whatever it is that captures attention, right? And this is not this is just strictly in the social media attention space.
Right.
This is not in like the workspace, but I have an idea that it will also sort of trickle into that, because now that people have all these tools, suddenly, if they're able to make a web page, they can say, "Oh, I'm a designer now. Like I can make a button. I can make a 3D model of a shoe with a prompt. I'm a shoe designer now." Right? So like these terms that we use to, how do you see that for the future of the creative? Will we also not only have to create the work and do great work, but we will also have to defend it a bit more? I want to hear what you think about that.
Yeah. I think the challenge here will be people believing that you have what it takes to carry out a project from start to finish based on AI prompts. And I think that's going to be a tough one to sell to, let's say, in an interview. Because think about this, in an interview, or whether you are coming as a consultant, freelancer, let's say, for hypothetically, your agency relies heavily on AI.
Yeah.
You, on the other end, as a potential new client that is considering this agency, would you trust them to carry out a project from start to finish? Let's say the project might involve a trip to Asia.
Yeah.
You don't have, let's say, access to internet, or I don't know, things might be blocked here and there. And let's say they don't have access to AI's capabilities.
Right.
Now, what do you do? Or let's say the power goes out, you don't have, access to internet. What do you do?
Right. Yeah, it's just like, wait a minute. Can I pause? We have to wait until ChatGPT gets back online before I can
continue doing my work.
Yeah. That's really that. I definitely see that.
Right. Or just to also think about it this way, like, let's say a doctor that has learned with AI generated information, tutorials, things like that. And that was the majority of his, of his learning, but
sure.
But he hasn't had practice.
Yeah.
Then would you trust them with your health? Would you trust them with your body? And that's where practice and being hands-on comes into play as the real experience,
Yeah.
because AI is still a theory, is not an application.
Mm.
So you have to work with people that are good at applicating the information that they have learned, not
Yeah.
the person that, well, I can find a theory about how something is done and I'm gonna tell you that, well, I can do that too. So then I don't need you, therefore you are not hired.
Right. Right. I also think that what you touched on a while back in season 1, where it like it doesn't matter something, it was something about like it doesn't matter what the idea is, like did it get made, whether it's like good or not. Like the question is, did it
Mhm.
get made?
Mhm.
Did it come into reality? And I think that that's a really important thing. I want to share a little bit of my experience with using AI in over the past year, I guess, couple years, but
Mhm.
more so focused on the last few months, where it's really had an enormous impact in my personal development and allowed me to um, go confidently into spaces that before my knowledge was sort of, if you can imagine a pixelated image that
Oh, I
that
see.
of
That's good.
missing,
Yeah.
yeah, like sort of missing blocks and things like that. It's almost like a puzzle. AI has been able to kind of come in and say like, don't worry, I got your back. I can plug in these holes for you. And it's allowed me to exercise a different medium now, right? So I, as a digital designer, I've been able to take these otherwise static prototype, maybe some movement, and actually translate that into executable code.
Right.
And I've been able to take my sort of spotty knowledge of how code and works, and I've been able to create something really cool. And now I've been doing it for clients, and it's been great because it's allowed me to work with the material that I've been designing with. Like no longer it's no longer just a sketch. It's we're working with the material. We're working with the components that actually run on the machines, right? And so there's been a lot of a positive growth there that I see that for many other creatives as well, right? So what is the theme here? Just like hearing what you are thinking and how you're using it, it's and how like I've been experiencing it myself. It it seems to me that it really comes down to it's a tool. It's just another tool. It's just a really powerful, expensive new tool. And I don't mean expensive like monetarily. I mean energy wise and all the stuff that goes behind creating it. But I want to talk about one really important thing: the risk of using it. Now, I'm not talking about privacy. I'm not talking about all that stuff. That's a whole other topic.
Mhm.
Cesar, the thing I want to ask you about is, do you think that there is a risk with growing dependent on this new tool that is that could become a threat to the creative professional's development later on? Like, for example, hey, come up with 10 concepts for me for XYZ. This is what I'm thinking. Like, those neural connections that you would otherwise make with a pen and paper,
Mhm.
you're now sort of offloading that work to the AI. And like, are we going to get to a point where people just are, they're like, I'm too lazy to think about this stuff anymore?
Mm. I I think so. Uh, to a certain degree, there will be some of that heavy reliance on like, I don't want to think about this. Oh, ChatGPT, blah blah blah. Um, but I think there has to be a balance.
Yeah. I agree.
From
Yeah.
yourself, like self-disciplinary balance on how much you rely on it and like how much you use it, because I also don't want to lose the art of crafting an email, myself.
Oh yeah. True. Mm-hmm.
Because it's important for me to uh, it's important for me to keep that alive, in my mind, in my brain, in my creative um, repertoire. How to
Learning how to
write?
communicate. Yeah. Learning how to
Yeah,
write.
correct. And that's another. Writing is another creative outlet. It's not pictures. It's with words. It's not with colors. It's with, with sentences. So yeah, there is something there that we shouldn't lose.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you said, communication, that's important. And I think um, AI could help you maybe sharpen or or give you a break.
Yeah.
But you should always be prepared for the moment that, like, oh, AI is down or something like that. I have to do it
Right.
myself. So just be prepared for that.
Yeah. That's great. I think one of the ways that I've been sort of thinking about this is whenever you ask for something, it's sort of like you're getting the sweetness of the juice, but you're not getting the fiber, right?
Mhm.
You're not learning from how it got to the result, then you're just taking the sugar and you're not getting any of the nutrients, right?
Right.
And that's something that we have to keep in mind. I think when it comes down to the balance, like striking that balance, we have to, I think, take a moment to reflect about
Mhm.
our relationship with new technology and how we are positioned to use it and not have it use us, because it is a two-way street. Like you are getting feedback and you are getting rewarded with the answers or with the
Mhm.
generated image or whatever, but you are also training it. You are also giving it information. So that's something always to keep in mind, I think. Someone recently, we were having a conversation about this, and they spoke about it, AI, I mean, as a person. Like it's really like collaborating with sort of like a machine-like person, right? And this year is really big on this concept of agents. And for those of you who don't know what an agent is or haven't heard of it until now, the TLDR is really, an agent is just like an AI program string of things that, I'm going to butcher this explanation, but bear with me. It basically allows for multiple actions to be taken. So for example, an agent would be able to, an AI agent that's embedded in email would be able to write the email, proofread it, and then send it on its own, that kind of thing. It's almost like an automated, a fancy robot. Let's just put
Right.
it that. And so the conversation was around how agents will become coworkers, like coworkers with you. And
Oh.
yeah, and it brought up a really interesting topic. Here it goes. If you are a remote worker, you will eventually be competing with an AI agent, right? And the only way to really keep your edge is to go back to the office and be there in person,
Oh, wow.
right?
That's true.
So I want to hear what you think about that.
That's true because um, there are some, of course, some exceptions to that where, like, uh, remote work might make sense for the kind of work that you do. But I do believe on the importance of human interaction,
100%.
like physically being there, having sparking conversations. Oh, I didn't know you think of that. Like, oh, I saw this. Look at this. Things like that. Like, it's just the natural way of working and creating. Um, so I see that being a common scenario, especially in this year, the following year. That's gonna be something that companies are gonna try to, um, you know, try to replace with, like, well, this person is not here, but
Let's get an AI agent.
or let's say you have a person managing, I don't know, 3, 5, 10 agents. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so at least you keep an eye on, like, what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, because I wouldn't let an agent single-handedly do something without my approvals.
Right.
But yeah, I think I could see that being a scenario.
It's been something that's been on my mind recently. Just that thought of what remote work did to the office and how amazing it was. There was like this honeymoon period, I think, for a lot of us who were just like, whoa, that's cool. I don't have to commute anymore. Like, it's this genius. Let's work from home. And I actually have given this a lot of thought because one of my first roles was working in a co-working startup.
Oh, wow.
Startup when the pandemic hit. So my job was like figure out how the office rebounds after COVID.
Oh, wow.
So I spent a lot of time thinking about that, and what we realized is, the user was now wanting something else. They were wanting hybrids. They were wanting flexibility, and the shift, like the power went from what the company wants to what does the employee want. And now what I've noticed is that the shift is going back to what does the company want, right?
It's a pendulum. It's always a pendulum.
Yeah. That's what I'm noticing. And this is different for whatever. There are companies that are just remote now, things have changed, whatever. But we're seeing this trend, and we can see it in like government. Like recent news was like, the headline I think was like, everyone needs to come back to the federal government to work, and there's no more remote, etc. I think Elon was a big trendsetter for that. But the point that I want to get to is just that thing about in-person collaboration. You've been going into the studio for some time now, right?
Yeah.
And you've also had to work remote. So I want to ask you, what, if you can, articulate why one is superior, if one is superior to the other. Just any thoughts that you have about like the advantages of being in person.
Right. I think the human interaction, the being in person approach, it's very important because creativity thrives in being spontaneous.
Oh.
Creativity thrives in happy accidents. And there are less chances of those happening if you are not in the office.
Mm.
A lot of the books that, I'm sorry.
Sorry, how so? Can you give me an example of maybe an instance in your experience of that? Like happy. Sorry to think that.
No, it's okay. I mean, this happened quite often during my days at Yeezy, where I would make a prototype that something happened, like, let's say, I don't know, to the paint, or the glue didn't stick well, and it created this, I don't know, weird shape, weird finish. But I still didn't want to show up empty-handed. When I would present the prototype, sometimes those mistakes that I consider mistakes
Yeah.
became the reason why they like the prototypes. And I wouldn't say anything. I would be like, "Oh, you love that? Okay." But I knew that I was like, "Oh my God." The thing that I was like sweating, about, it became the reason why they like the prototype. So, things like that. And, with those interactions, seeing the prototype in hand, like versus like a picture video, it's just like everything happens faster because, people are right there, making decisions on the spot, instead of this like remote approach of like, oh, let's schedule a meeting, a review, oh, let's postpone it. So like, and that's when I came to the realization that, ideas have an expiration date. And because people, if people move, people's attention span and what they're into at the moment can change the next day, can change next week. So when you show them something that you did last year, I'm no longer interested. So that's why it's important, the human interactions, right there, like, real time. Interactions. Because
So
I think,
I was just going to say that it's sort of like dial-up internet versus fiber internet, right? Like if we were putting it in bandwidth terms, there's a higher bandwidth of exchange of information when you're
in person. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And you also learn a lot too. You learn, you also can teach something to someone much better. So I think the value and the benefits of being in person at the office outweighs the cons.
Incredible. Yeah, I agree. I have had limited experience. Like usually the teams that I've been on in person have been very small. So I'm always very curious to hear from larger teams and the dynamics that have played in that. Like how those interactions have played out. I want to is dive a little bit into what would you advise? You've been around a lot of great designers. You yourself are an amazing designer, very accomplished, of course. And
likewise.
Thank you. I want to ask you, if you were to be advising a founding designer, someone who has been brought onto a company and is building what they want to be a world-class design team, how would you advise them in selecting members to join that team?
Let me make sure that I understand the question right. So you're asking me if how would I advise the person bringing members onto the team?
Yeah. Like,
Oh,
yeah.
got it.
Mhm.
I would definitely tell them to look for the instances where the person they're interviewing to look for the instances where the person had to be a, a problem solver, um, because that there itself says a lot about you as a person and about you as a profession. Because problems or inconveniences or obstacles will happen. They will come across when you're trying to do something always. So then the key here is that, like, okay, there was a problem here. What did you do to minimize the delays, to minimize the impact of that challenge? What did you do? And based on that, I think that would be a good gauge for you to know if you want them on your team.
Mm,
Um,
that's great.
yeah, and then I think also asking about what are you doing to improve yourself. I think that's also important
Yeah.
because there you'll gauge the level of ambition and the level of commitment they have to their craft, to their career.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Those are that's really great. And I think even for people who are maybe not making those decisions right now, that maybe they are looking for a team to be a part of, these are really great insider tips to keep in mind as
Mhm.
you're having those conversations. And this has been recently on my mind because I have been talking to design teams looking for what the next chapter is. And I've been asked really great questions. And um, one of it, the topic has been on my mind. Like, how do you select the teams that you become part of? Because I've started to see now in this point in my career that it's not just what you're working on, it's who you're working with that is the big thing. That is the thing that needs to be paid a lot of attention to, because what who your team members are, how they treat the craft and their attitude towards the way they think about design and its role in an organization is going to impact what you're able to produce and how you're able to produce it. And so that's something that I've been thinking a lot about. And also just the idea that when you're looking for a new role, they're interviewing you, yes, but you're also interviewing them because you're trying to, it's sort of like a date, if you will. I mean, it's a little less maybe, but you're trying to find out, you're going to be spending a lot of time with these people. So it's like, we got to find out, can we work well together? And I've been discovering that a good indication is the quality of the conversation.
Right. That's good. Yeah.
Right. Like that's something that I've been noticing, that with people who you really align with and feel comfortable around, and you're able to be your true self, and you sort of the nerves of meeting new people kind of goes away, because you're sort of brought into the curiosity, like you're both captivated by the
You can be
process.
yourself. Yeah.
Oh,
That's
that's a really
important.
good indication that that's going to be the case maybe when you're also working and solving problems. No, I think that's really important to know for our listeners who are potentially looking for their new role. Going back to the topic of AI and the topics of it as a tool and our relationship towards it, what are some things that will remain, some things that will not change. Like for example, it doesn't matter how advanced technology gets, you still need you still need warmth when it's cold. You still need food. You still need
The
a home.
basics.
The basics, you still need companionship, etc. And if you get to the really high top, if you have all those things, then you can get self-actualization, which is the goal, right? According to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What are some things that will remain valuable regardless of how advanced ChatGPT gets or DeepSeek or whatever it is, AI models out there? Just because you have a faster computer doesn't mean that you're going to be producing better work. Just because you have, a larger pencil doesn't mean it's going to, produce better ideas.
Yeah.
So yeah. Like, what are your thoughts on like the things that will remain the same no matter what?
I think the ability to make human connections, the ability to not only communicate, not only to empathize, or to provide comfort in communication, in also the ability to persuade. That's very important, especially in business. If you are expanding, if you are wanting to land a new client, new project, you need to persuade people that you are the right choice, that working with you has benefits and all those things. So like persuasion, the skill of persuasion it's important to have, and not in a manipulative way, but more in like a the right amount of persuasion. Like that's something that's important. So yeah, like all the human connection skills are gonna remain a foundation for anything that you do in any field, because that's what business is. Business is human connection. Business is people. And then I was gonna say on the creative side of the spectrum, I think the ability to apply creative thinking will remain also a foundation. How to go around obstacles, how to rethink the process, how we do things. It's a skill that will always remain important, because from that question, I'm sure that's how AI came about. Like, oh, how do we do things better, more efficiently, effectively, whatever? Oh, AI. So out of questioning how we do it, things like AI came out.
Yeah.
So I'm sure on our day-to-day, we can also start, we'll still question that every year, every time, like, how can I do best?
Yeah, definitely. And I think designers have that advantage of having that built-in mental model, or having trained on how to handle the unknown and how to how to work around reframing problems, etc.
Right. And that's something that's going to be important too. The human ingenuity aspect, your intuition. Building your intuition will remain your intuition is a foundation for anything that you do, because anything that you do is based on decisions.
Yeah.
And AI cannot replicate human ingenuity. AI cannot predict what they don't know. Because it's based on code, it's based on a pool of
what's existed.
Right, information. But anything outside of that, AI won't be able to help you.
Yeah.
So that's where human intuition and ingenuity will always be important, because you're gonna have to make the connections that no one can do.
Yeah.
And especially in the creative field, when we're looking for innovation, for breakthroughs, you have to go outside the box,
Yeah.
because it's hard to, because if you stay within the box, within the information that you know, true creation won't happen. What's going to happen is replication, replicating what's been done. And so that's something to keep in mind. Mm-hmm.
No, I think that's great. And the human connection part is it's so, I mean, it's so vital. It's the foundation for everything else, right? Like you can solo, you can do things, but if you really want to make an impact, this is something that I've been meditating on for quite some time now. It's like, I think there's like an old saying or old proverb of like, if you want to go fast, you go by yourself, and if you want to go further, you go with a group of people. And the human connection part, it got me thinking about conversation and how ideas are born from those conversations that you have with team members or collaborators or whatnot. But also the internal monologue
Mm-hmm.
that you have with your intuition, where your intuition speaks to you. And if you train yourself to listen and to act on it, the results are always mysterious, I think, in that it seems to come out of nowhere, but it's really just this like thing that is working behind the scenes, behind maybe your consciousness. And I think my question for you is the intuition. How do you advise people to refine it, and to how do you learn to trust it?
Mm-hmm. I think we touched on this last episode, or I don't know, or with someone else, I cannot remember. But to build your intuition, the way I built mine, it was by reading books.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I think
because
I remember.
I remember we talked about like the books present a lot of case scenarios, as they were trying to prove a point on the book.
Yes.
So by me reading all those examples of like what happened and how they got there in terms of like creative process, and how that process led to the creation of the product. So when you read books and all these concise information, gives you internally the knowledge for you to make decisions when you're in a similar situation.
So that feels like you feel like that gives you more confidence to listen to, because you have points of reference.
Correct.
So,
yeah.
So I think also intuition and taste are very related, right?
Mm-hmm.
In
Yeah.
a way. So do you also approach refining your taste in a similar way, or is there a different process, or do you, maybe you disagree, you think that taste is completely different in its own different domain? Maybe it's something. What are your thoughts about that? Because it's been a topic in the tech community right now. It's almost like a lot of these tech folks have just recently discovered taste, and that it's very powerful. And I'm curious to hear from someone whose taste I really admire, what your thoughts are on developing it and curating it.
For me, taste, it's connected to the visual experiences that you have been exposed to. Because in your brain, in your mind, you have a library of visual. And when you're designing, your hands, or like what you do, it's based on what you have seen. Um, so by you having, a big repertoire of visuals can help you insert the right shape, the right color, the right texture in the right in the composition that you're trying to create. It'll help you compose um, more compelling products, um, and it will help you with making visually engaging or like visually appealing or harmonious design from a visual standpoint.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is based on what you have been exposed to visually, and hence this is why it's important, as you've mentioned, and I have preached this before too, the importance of visiting art museums constantly,
Yeah.
and or going to a library and just getting lost in sections that that you are not familiar with, but you never know what you can find there. So
Yeah.
exposing yourself to experiences will help you become a better designer. And that's why traveling is very important for creatives. Traveling is very important for designers.
Yeah. It's so true. I maybe I've mentioned this before, but I was reading a book called Deviate, and the book covers the neuroscience of seeing things differently.
Oh, see?
And he talks so much about traveling because it does this thing to your brain where it just like flips everything. And it's really useful. But I know we're getting near time here, and I want to go ahead and wrap this up. But before that, yeah, just in parentheses, I'm curious for listeners who've made it this far, what do you guys think about the length of the Moodboard podcast? Is this a good length? Should it be longer? Should it be 3 hours? Let us know in the comments. No, but I wanted to just cover that idea of deviation and being able to put yourself in situations that are new so that you can make new connections so that form your work, and highlight the advantages of being able to become a translator of sorts. Like, for example, learning how to go into completely different domains. Let's say going into vintage cookbooks and finding inspiration there that you can bring to shoe design or web design or whatever it is. So like the advantages of going to completely unrelated domains and finding inspiration there to then bring back to what you do on the day-to-day. I think it's really important to emphasize how going into books, into libraries, old used bookstores, museums, etc., films, just take from wherever, right? Like that's really important.
Yeah.
And there is a book by Edward de Bono, who is an author who I think he wrote a lot about creativity, but he calls this type of thinking lateral thinking, where you're sort of zigzagging and you're sort of like picking things without, you don't have an agenda. You're just like, oh, that's interesting, I'm going to take that. Oh, that's interesting, I'm going to take this. There's no agenda. And I think being more proactive about that, following your curiosity in that, I think leads to a lot of really interesting stuff. And I see it in the really curious people that I've met, in that they're easily like,
you have to make space and time for that kind of moments, for that moments of like, let me recharge my my creative energy, or like let me expand my library this week.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, because you could also get caught in like, well, I'm always into this, so this is my
expertise and like,
and this is my box of like
yeah,
things that I love and like. That's good for a period of time.
yeah,
Eventually, you should like, okay, let me rotate. Maybe look for new images and just like expose yourself to new things, and then like get into something else. Get into something else. Yes.
yeah, 100%. So this has been a really great chat, Cesar. We covered AI, we covered the creative process, what the future might look like. We made maybe some predictions here and there. What would you leave our audience with? Any recommendations, book recommendations, films, or any thoughts that you want to leave people with on our sign off?
Yeah, I want people to think about what makes sense to them. What is that they want to do? What is that they want to accomplish? And what do they want to be known for? And as this, as yourself, this like ask yourself this question.
Yeah.
Because they'll help you guide you towards the path that you want to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, just ask yourself this question.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think we should always be asking ourselves that. Let that guide our actions. I recently stumbled upon the Stanley Kubrick book that made me really curious about checking more of his films out. And I'm hoping that I get to see a little bit more of that over the weekend. So if anyone has any favorite Stanley Kubrick films, please let us know. Hit us up in the comments, and we will see you very, very soon. So thank you for listening to the Moodboard podcast. My name is Aaron.
And this is Cesar.
And we come here every week to have meaningful conversations to help you unlock your creative potential. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.
Take care.